All right, I'm gonna tell you something. It's hot. It is hot today. It is so hot that it brings to mind a phrase. It is hot as balls outside. Man, I stepped out, thought I'd get myself something to eat, and I mean, I made it. I got something to eat and didn't quite. I wanted to make it back before 3 to start this off. Didn't quite make it, but man, that was. I don't know if you could see the sweat not coming through on stream. I kind of hope not, but man, it's just sticky. And this is just cold water for the working man. Hey, bull catcher. Hey, Ian. All right, let me switch over things here. Give me a sec. Okay. Something I've been thinking about. I'm trying Swordtember again. If you missed, I posted a couple things in a couple places. Started Swordtember again, and just to keep in mind, I'm just gonna rattle on about some stuff while I'm waiting for you fine folks to ask me questions or bring something of worth to the discussion. If not, I'll just keep rattling off on whatever until somebody hands me some inspiration and says, "You know, there's in your heat." Hey, look, I lived in Texas for a long time. I lived in Houston, but the interesting thing about New York City, and I remember seeing this in some documentary, is whatever weirdness, New York City actually has a climate that's much more southern than it is northern. I don't know why. Something to do with the coast. I don't know. Certain things converge. So New York City, in terms of climate, is much closer to the south than it is to say other northern cities like Boston. As far as I understand it, maybe that was totally, maybe that show was full of beans. So I was saying, I started Swordtember again, though I'm calling it Weptember because I wanted to do not just swords but weapons. I don't know. I kind of feel like there's the original game there, and I think it is borne out in terms of mythology and legends and whatnot. There's much more emphasis on swords. I'm just gonna zoom out a bit. Much more emphasis on swords. But I like other weapons too, and I like tempting people with other weapons. I like giving people reasons to maybe diversify just having a sword. Of course, there are multiple different ways to do that. I've mentioned this in the past, I've always had a love for some of the more granular melee tables, weapon versus armor and things like that, because it does give some advantages to certain things. Like, in this case, a mace is maybe better than a sword, so on and so forth. See, Ian, I told you so. I told you. Yep. New York gets humid. Not quite Houston humid, but it gets up there. And it's 95 degrees today. And unlike in Houston, where everyone has, or almost everybody has, crazy amounts of air conditioning, we tend to be kind of starved of it. Or our air is just old. In-wall units, no central air, that kind of thing. So going back to what I was saying, and this will come around to hexcrawling. I'm not going totally on a tangent. So I like to. I'm using Swordtember not just for swords but for all kinds of weapons. But as I was coming up with these weapons, and I had to do I think 5 or 6 today to catch up because I'd totally forgotten about Swordtember, and then I saw it on Mastodon. Somebody posted and I was like, "Ooh, there it is again! Ooh, I'd like to try. I'd like to do better than I did last year. Really get something going." And I thought, I'm not going to worry about art right now. I'm just going to write some stuff up. And I started writing some things out. And what I noticed was that I was doing this kind of implicit world building as I was creating these reference. I'm reading Ian's comment. Creating these weapons, because to me it just comes up. I don't know about you, but I generally just don't create, hey, sword +2. I try to think a little bit, and these are the questions. These are the kind of things I have here up in these questions. What I start thinking about. So who created it? Who made this thing? And I'll probably put another one in there, like who was the original owner. And I would say, let me see, there's right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you can answer, I would think a good thing if you could try to pick half of these to answer is probably good. But anyway, who created or who owned it? One of those two. What was it created for? And then kind of where is it now? Who's got it now? And who wants it? So when I look at the various weapons I was creating, I was writing answers to these questions. I wasn't doing it in this style. I didn't put a whole bunch of bullet points to answer them, but in a little bit of little blurbs I was making, that's what you'll see. In fact, the one that I posted for Work in Progress Wednesday was the club of some demon. And the demon, he doesn't have the club anymore. It's lost. It's somewhere in the prime material plane. And his minions are looking for it, basically. So they have it, right? Who's what? I don't know who created it. Was the demon? Was somebody else? I don't know, but he was the original owner of it. Where is it now? Maybe buried under ice in a crater. And who wants it? The demon wants it. And via his followers, trying to get it back. Okay, so that's just one. Hey, Cage. That's just one weapon. Fine. I came up with the name of a demon. I took Beelzebub and just kind of rearranged the letters till I got something that wasn't quite Beelzebub, but I'm sure if you look at it, you squint, you'll see Beelzebub, but something different. So fine. That's great. Okay, now I'm on to weapon number 2. And I start looking at weapon number 2, and I forget which one that was. And I start, again, I just start trying to think about giving a little bit of a backstory, right? Okay, well, this one, I think the theme or the prompt, hold on a minute. I believe if I look it up here, the prompt is going to tell me. I have it here on my phone. Let's see. Hold on a minute. Okay, yeah. So the first prompt was Abyssal. So that's where I got my my demon from. Okay, Abyssal, demon, sure. The second one was Ghoulish. Okay. Well, I'm thinking about what makes it ghoulish. So I came with, again, a little backstory. Well, this was somebody's, I think it's a dagger, maybe. It's a dagger. It belonged to a priest. And this priest, because of, there was a schism in the church or temple where this priest was, and the priest ended up getting entombed. Him and his closest followers ended up being entombed underneath the church while they were still alive. Cannibalism and fun and games ensued. And at the end of it all, the priest and those followers who were basically buried alive with him were turned into, I think he's a ghast and they're ghouls. And he's got this weapon, and the power of the weapon is it basically can detect undead, and you can try to control undead with it. So great. But of course I had to come up with, okay, well, it's a church. So what's the name of the church? And okay, I wanted to come up with a little story. All right, so there's a guy, he's entombed underneath this church. And of course, I like to give a little bit of a tension or something. So I make a note of, and he's been trapped under here for some time frame. And because the ground is consecrated, he can't get out. But the consecration seems to be fading. Something's happened. It's changing the dynamics, and now maybe he'll escape. So a little bit of me giving a little plot hook, a little thread that you could tug on. You could take that, plug it in. Great. So now I have 2 things, and I have 2 locations. Here we go. Getting into the hexcrawl parts. I have 2 locations. Maybe I should make some bubbles here. I got 2 locations. No, I don't want you there. I've got a crater buried under ice. This is where the location of, well, yeah. Location. Last known weapon location, something like that. All right. So that's just one. Okay. But now I've got a second one, which is I've got a church, which is also, I don't know why I'm putting this in here, but whatever. So suddenly I've got 2 locations. I don't know where these exist. I don't have a map that's going to go along with this, but I don't know where this church is. I don't know where this crater is. Obviously, it's under a sea of ice. I think it's the terminology I use, so presumably it's in some kind of polar region. But now I got 2 things. All right. Well, what was the third one? Draconic. This one, I believe, or maybe I need to move. I might need to move these. Let me move these over. So I'm not getting in the way. Third weapon's Draconic, and I think there was a tomb of a dragon cult leader. And this is actually just a potential last known weapon location, because I specified in that story that there seemed to be conflicting evidence whether this hey Mikey, there seems to be conflicting evidence or rumor or legend whether this weapon is buried with the cult leader or whether one of his lieutenants took the weapon and is still leading the dragon cult. Because there's the idea where there was a red dragon, and the red dragon gave this weapon, which is one of those a flamberge type sword, to the leader of its cult. When that cult leader died, some say it was buried with him, others say it's still wandering around. So it might be, but if you were, say, looking for that, then maybe you'd want to find it. In any case, whether it's there or not, we've established that there is a tomb. Now we're up. Now I'm on the weapon. Now I'm on to the fourth weapon of the ones I did, and this weapon is metallic. Right. Now, what did I do with the metallic? Where did I put the metallic one? I think this one is just lost. I think there's no known. I believe this one is no known location. So this we can put aside. So no known location. We'll just throw it up there. Let's see. Ian says, one of my system goals is to limit inflating rolls with plus X items, and I want to put together something that would map BX style plus X bonuses to tiers of potential or possible abilities a weapon might have. To ease using classic style adventures with magic items in Cairn or Black Hack or into the odd style systems. I think that's a good goal. I mean, I think just generally and Ian, you can maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the non-specialized magic weapons, like, the generic ones, really just kind of go +1, +2, maybe. Then you start getting into, and I haven't gone through and done some kind of inventory, so I could be totally off. Then you start getting those ones that are kind of +1, +2 or 3 versus something, which kind of hints at a purpose, right? If this is a sword with a bonus to giants, that kind of saying something about the sword. It's not quite so generic anymore. It's got a purpose. And then you have the things like your Vorpal swords, your Holy Avengers, your whatever type stuff. All right, so that one, metallic weapon is lost. Then, oh, you know what? Let's see, lantern. What was lantern? Oh, yeah, lantern. Oh, wait a minute. Something. Hold on a minute. I'm forgetting something or other. What am I forgetting? Because I had, so draconic, ghoulish, metallic. Yeah, I don't remember. Abyssal. So lantern, because there's another thread here, and I've forgotten now what it was. So lantern. Oh, yeah. Now I remember this one. I just did these today, so you'd think my memory wouldn't be so bad. So here's where I started to connect the dots together. The lantern weapon was in the same spot. So here's what I did. here's where I'm getting to. So we're creating some things. We're taking these weapons, and these are weapons. If you just join us, I'm kind of on a Swordtember vibe, but I am tying this in. As I've been creating these weapons, I've been placing them in an inherent setting or a setting that I haven't created yet. I'm trying to think about these things, and I'm just as I want to do. You want to answer certain questions about it. I put some kind of questions that I'm likely to ask here. You know, who created it? Who was the original owner? What's the purpose? Who has it now? Where is it? And who wants it? Don't necessarily have to answer all of them, but it's good to answer some. And I just start coming up with places. Well, where is it? Well, it's at this church. Okay, great. Now I've got a church. Where is this other weapon? It's buried in a crater under ice. Okay, well, now somewhere in the world there is a crater buried under ice. But then I started making connections. So I talked about here that this church, this last known weapon location it has fading consecration. Okay. So then I come up with this other weapon, and now it's located at the same church. And guess what? Does this? Why not? Because I prefer to tie things together rather than just make a bunch of them. So this weapon was also at that same church. It wasn't secret because this first weapon was the product of something horrible. So nobody really knows it's there, or the people who know it's there would be through kind of supernatural means. When it's because this weapon here is owned by a ghoul who was buried under the church while he was alive, and nobody knows yet that he's a ghoul and he hasn't broken loose. So this is kind of a whole potential thing here. This weapon was a good weapon, and it was at that same church, and it was consecrating the grounds. Until it vanished. So here we've created this little situation. So now we've taken two items, and we've kind of and a location, and we've created a location. And now we have a little bit of a dynamic situation going on. We have this church. Something terrible happened at this church. And that terrible thing, I think in terms of if I was going to write this up as an adventure, that terrible thing would have to be resolved somehow. And the product of that terrible thing has been these undead have emerged because of whatever betrayal, whatever happened that caused these people who should not have buried people alive in the church. It's not an evil church. Something happens, something rotten is in that church, and that rotten thing has really been made manifest in terms of these undead. And it just so happened that that church was the last resting place of this weapon, and now the weapon's vanished. And it was the weapon, the sort of the magic of that weapon, the sword in the stone, if you will, that was holding these undead things at bay. And now, any minute now, those undead are going to break loose, start wreaking havoc, and at any time in this process, an adventuring party could show up and find out what's going on or do whatever. We have a little bit of situation there. I also have, and I don't know which one, I'm starting to lose track of what I did where, but this other thing was happening where I came up with a weapon for it was a weapon of a necromancer. So I guess the other thing I was doing, I don't really have I can't remember for the life of me what I did, and I don't think I have it on my phone to look it up. But basically, I started coming up with this whole necromancer story, this necromancer, War of the Necromancer story. Whereas this weapon here, I'll just link this, was linked to let's call this I guess that's that. War of the Necromancer. And I had some other weapon that was also linked. I don't remember what it was or where I stuck it, but this War of the Necromancer. I'll just call this right now, I'll just call it another weapon. Now, the point of me drawing all this out here is in coming up with these 5, 6, 7 weapons, whatever that number was, I was building out setting information, and I could easily translate that setting information into a hex crawl. Or into a hex map that I could then use to crawl it. I've got a couple locations. I have at least I think I want to say that there's another tomb that I created. There's some kind of ice area. Maybe it's a glacial fragment, depending on where in the world it is. Maybe there's a somewhat an accessible, or at least nearby, polar or Antarctic region nearby, in which case maybe somewhere in there, if you could find it, you could find that Demon's Club. I've got this church, could be somewhere, but I was thinking of the church as being kind of isolated. Maybe it's an old faith that has waned, but maybe not. It could be in the middle of downtown, wherever. But you can see how coming up with these items, coming from the items outwards, just me trying to come up with, and the reason why I was doing this is because I intend to share these items, and I don't want to just have like, hey, it's just a +2 sword with that flames when you light up. Like I think it's more evocative and more fun when it has a little story. But then as soon as you start coming up with a story for it, you start to come up with locations and names and people. And then I was thinking, as I was writing these things out, I'm like, well, why don't I start connecting them? Like, why create a whole bunch of just rando people? I mean, they're all rando people, right? But why not make something more of them? So I just started connecting the dots. Well, this weapon that I have over here in the church belonged to a patriarch. And that patriarch was involved in the defeat of the necromancer. Maybe that patriarch was a member of this church. And so when he was laid to rest and the sword was placed in the church, it consecrated the grounds. But now that somebody stole the weapon, for reasons, who knows, consecration is lifted, which has then done this. Now, of course, could some of these things, could there be other connections? Could these connect here? Like this? Maybe. Who knows? I mean, maybe I'll even go back, and I'll probably at some point when I've written enough of these, I'll want to go back through and rewrite them. But you could think of each one of these weapons is in a hex. Each one of these weapons represents, we're always talking about with hexes, we're always talking about what kind of special things do we have. When I was, if you've been following my videos for the last couple of weeks, whatever it is, when I've been looking at when I created that hex worksheet, and I was talking about sites and discoveries and secrets, these weapons or magic items in general are secrets, or they could exist inside the secret. So when we're thinking about, well, we need stuff to populate our hexes with, we're looking at, well, could it be a layer? Could it be this or that? Well, these items become another way of generating that content. And I think you could do a lot if you wanted to. This comes down to a little bit of, well, what appeals to you in the creative process is, maybe it makes sense in a Swordtember kind of way, create a bunch of magic items, kind of create a tapestry from them, and then use those as the basis for the secret things on your map. So instead of, let's go down to our old friends down in down here, we're looking at these areas. Instead of starting with layers, we could start with items and just start plunking them around. All these items are interrelated. They all correlate to each other in some way, because as what's happening as I'm building out these weapons, it seems like there was this sort of implicit or implied backstory here of all the weapons that I've made, or most of them. I mean, it's only been 6 or 7, whatever, but 5 out of the 7, 6 out of the 7, is that there was some big conflict going on. And as a result of that big conflict, or because there was this big conflict, that people were creating magic items to be on both sides of the conflict. So I had these, one of the items I made were some magic arrows. One of the items I made was this patriarch's weapon. Those were on the kind of good side of the conflict. Then I also have this other weapon. Well, I had the demon's weapon, and who knows where the demon's weapon enters into it, but it could very well be that the demon was involved somehow with things. But then the necromancer, I forgot what weapon I made for the necromancer. So you had the weapon on that side. So, as I think, as often is the case, I get a lot of inspiration as I kind of read and continue to go back over things like Lord of the Rings. Particularly, I find that that work just resonates with me. And it's the kind of stuff you see, right? You see the barrow blades created in the war with the Witch King. There's obviously the Rings of Power, and there's the One Ring. There's the Phial of Galadriel. All these things created with purposes. And so we see that, hey, now you've got this tapestry of things that all have a purpose. It creates a really interesting context that you can then apply to your empty or whoever populating your landscape is. So going over here, we got Dorlo, and we've got, I guess, New Dorlo and Old Dorlo. Well, what if Old Dorlo was destroyed somewhat in one of these battles of that war? Maybe Old Dorlo, that nobody knows or has been lost to all but the sages, was where the necromancer lived. Maybe it was, this was his tower. It was destroyed, and after so much time, people kind of forgot, and people built around it. But then some of those things, maybe some item of his, some weapon, or it could be something else, is still in there somewhere. Could be. Or maybe this is it. Maybe this was his stronghold, or something else. So there's his tower over here. Maybe this was his stronghold. Maybe this was something where his armies marched over, and this was kind of the high watermark, the high tide line for how far his armies got before the forces of good and whatever came back. So somebody else might have fallen here and gotten it. Maybe they built something here as kind of a, why is this fortification here at Lomendi? Well, maybe that was to help during some time of during this warfare period, maybe before or after the depredations of the necromancer. They built this here to keep a watchful eye on the, because Lomendi probably, I'm assuming, has a really good vantage on anything coming out of these forests here. So you built it here. And then who built it? Why? What happened here? Is there an item here? Is this maybe the church where something was? What is this? Is this where that guy was imprisoned? Right? So if you don't find layers, if layers don't float your boat, if you're having trouble coming up with a bunch of layers, doesn't make sense to you, then maybe you could look at items as another way. Come up with a bunch of items, see how they fit into whatever backstory, whatever world story you have, and then see what makes sense. And then that can become another way of world building. I just found, I guess, short story made very long. I just found, having gone through the exercise, or starting to go through the exercise of creating these weapons, how it was sort of easy to transition into creating this kind of world around the weapons. Because I basically starting from nothing. I'm not applying any existing setting information to it. I'm just coming up with weapons, and suddenly I've got this whole bit with a necromancer and a demon and a church that's gone wrong, and a patriarch, and all these things going on. And then it seems at that point, it almost just makes too much sense to just tie them together and say, oh, what's going on here? Why is this happening? How do these things tie together? And then the next step would be well, where do we position these things on the map? Where might this ice crater be? I don't think he's got a polar region here. So we don't have one here, but it could be like, where's the ice crater? It could be here. Maybe this thing is, maybe the reason why we've got the symbol here is because on the ice, maybe someone put some kind of shrine to keep the ground, again, consecrated, or maybe there's magic in here that keeps this frozen. So this is the crater. And then here underneath here, there's some way in, kind of almost Taverns of Thracia style, that maybe there's some way through the ice and you get to some hidden thing here, right? Maybe this is it. This is the crater. And this is actually frozen, unnaturally frozen. Possibilities are endless, but it's another way. I guess what I'm trying to communicate is it's another way you can try to tackle your hex, populating your hexes, if other approaches maybe don't speak to you, or you just run out of gas. And especially if you're starting with a map this big, it's really easy to run out of gas. And you also kind of want to mix things up. I mean, you don't want animal layers or just kind of layers to be everywhere. So you mix it up. Oh, you got ruins here. Okay, well, as I was talking about in my other thing, when you have these secrets, when you have these things you want the party to find, what is enticing about them? And seeding them with something like an item is a way to entice them. Not only that, it's a way you can build into things that are going on. You're giving reasons for your players to go there. And we do this anyway. It's just a matter of where you start. Do you start with some kind of mission like, oh, I've got cultists of Orcus, and they want a free Orcus, so I have to have 3 things. I'm going to put the 3 things in these 3 tombs. Okay, that's definitely one way to do it. Or you could be like, I've got these 3 things. I put them in these 3 tombs. Who might want them? Oh, wait. Okay, I can do it that way, right? So it's just looking at it a different way. It's almost looking, not, I won't say backwards, but looking at it a different way. And at the moment, I'm not in the, it's all just begun. So I've not yet hit the doldrums of, oh gosh, I need to make another weapon right now. So it's all good. But that's kind of all I have on that. I thought it was interesting. I'll probably write up something or make a video specifically on it, because I think there's some people may find it useful. I mean, I'm certainly finding it useful, and my brain's already working through like, well, what happened with the Necromancer Wars? Obviously the Necromancer lost, but is there some fragmentary presence of his still around? Is someone trying to bring him back? Is he related to that demon? Was part of what he was doing trying to summon that demon, and maybe the demon didn't, like often happens with those kind of rituals, that kind of somewhat worked, as he came out but wasn't fully formed, and so was defeated, and so he lost his club, and now he's brooding, and they're searching for it. His minions are searching for it, rather. There's a bunch of kind of fun things that you could do with that. And then before you know it, you've kind of got a little mini setting created, or at least some bit of history. And maybe for you, coming at it in that way will avoid some kind of I don't know, writer's block or whatever, but sometimes you kind of get stuck when you're trying to think about things the same way every time. This gives you a different way to think about it. That might free you around any kind of blockage or anything that might be blocking you. But I don't have much more to say on that at the moment. There will be more as Swordtember moves on, but that's it. You guys have anything? What else? Do I have any other things to talk about? What do you guys got for me? I'm sure I have some other things I can blather on about, but I'm here for you. Today of all days, I am here for you. So what have you got to me? Let me look at my notes. Well, hopefully somebody is typing up something. What? Michael Fergus says, how many encounters per hex? All right, the perennial question, the age-old question. Well, I don't worry. So Michael Fergus, I kind of default back to the time in hex equals chance of encounter. Hey, Ovaltine Patrol. Time out in the wilderness is going to essentially be the determining factor, not so much the hexes. So I don't try to put, well, I guess there's a couple things. If you mean encounters as in kind of locations or encounters as in creatures. If we're talking encounters as in creatures, I'll just use wandering creature checks. And if there's a layer and it's a creature layer, maybe there's a higher chance there. I know some folks, I know you said it was half tongue in cheek, but some folks will sit there and plot out like, no, I got 5 hexes. So we got 5 encounters. This encounter, bam, bam. I don't like that. I think it takes away a lot of the magic of the hex crawling, to be honest. It turns it into a rote exercise. I remember somebody once referred to it as a monster corridor, which is like encounter kind of thing. So I tend not to do that. In terms of locations of interest, I would say as much as you can manage, but just start with one. Start with one, because you could keep backfilling it, right? So, we're over here in Dorlo. So maybe we do that ring around Dorlo and we put some stuff in here. Who knows how much play that gets? We just put one in there. And maybe the party, like talking about week 1 of prep, right? Week 1 of prep. We're starting off in Dorlo. This is our session. We've had our sessions here, but this is first session. We're in Dorlo. The players have some kind of purpose. I don't know where they're treasure hunters. You say, okay, crack your fingers. All right, we got the ruins of old Dorlo, which are probably where the big stuff is. But there may be some other stuff we can seed around in case they want to start small. It's not really bad advice, right? Or bad idea. Start small, get a little money so you can get some hirelings, get some better equipment. If you're, depending on how your money was starting out, maybe you weren't able to equip yourselves to the best that you want to. So if you get a small score, you can maybe get some equipment, get some things, buy yourself a little time, some more resources. and then go for the big score. So you kind of put some stuff around here. So the first week goes by, they tootle around in these farmlands where there's some farm that's been abandoned and something weird's happening there. And okay, the farmers, there's been some kind of one of these fields has just been rotting everything, even though everything else is doing well, but now the rotting is starting to spread and they're seeing strange lights from the abandoned farmhouse, whatever. Okay, so you investigate, blah, blah, blah. Okay, great. So now you're talking about they do that, they come back. Session 1 over. Now you can probably do another ring. Well, I had one discovery in here. If I'm feeling it, maybe this plot line that we've uncovered about the rotting, the rot in the farm. Maybe now I want to put another one over here. Maybe I want to do something else. And so you can put another layer. Then they're still maybe dealing with that or doing other stuff. Maybe they make some phrase. You can put another layer, or you can put an outer ring around here, depending. So start with one. And then you can just build it up as you go, and then you can replace ones when they've been discovered. You want to say something else happens. They kick somebody out of something, and somebody else moves in. Whatever. Start with one. I think the problem. I know sometimes there's good guidance that will say something like, "Hey, put 3 or put 1d6 or do some number like that." But I think what ends up happening is you start rolling 6s, and you feel compelled to do that, and you're just going to burn yourself out. Or if I were to say 3. Well, do you need 3 to start with? I would say no. Just put 1. And just do the minimum, really do the minimum amount of work and definition possible on each one. And then only when they start to get interested in it, or you start to flesh it out, or whatever happens. Sometimes sometimes you get inspired. Sometimes you put something here like, ooh, this farm with the rot, and that starts getting your brain moving, and suddenly you're coming out with a bunch of stuff. Great, write it out. Put all that stuff to work. But if it doesn't, just sit it there and then see what happens. And then you can just keep kind of backfilling in or spreading outwards or both. And before you know it, you'll probably have more of these done than your party will have pushed forward. Because if you're doing things being kind of, you're sort of being more or less dense and packing them in, like everything having kind of something to it, they'll have stuff to do. And if you don't do something silly or crazy, like say, hey, you got a letter from your uncle over in Lomende, and so now they're just going to jet across to where you have nothing prepped. If you're sort of keeping the focus local as much as you can, as much as you and the dice and everything allows, then you will most likely have time to then fill in more info as you need it. Let's see. I think Michael is basically summarizing me. 1, start with the 1 and a few hexes around the starting town. Then 2, after the first adventure, maybe add some more another ring or go deeper in the current adventure hex. Right. Pretty much. Exactly. But the bottom line is be manageable for yourself. You know what you're, it's like when you're watching people doing the Dungeon 23, and hey, props to all the folks, credit to all the folks who have been continuing to plow forward on Dungeon 23, but some folks will do a lot, and some folks do a little, and some folks do a lot and a little, depending on the day. And I think the key is just keep moving. Keep getting something out there. Some days you may have a paragraph. Some days you may have a word. When you got the paragraph, write the paragraph down. When you got the word, write the word down. But just trying to get something out there so that you're not looking at a blank. Because this is kind of the worst. Your party goes, hey, we want to go north. And you're looking and you're like, I got nothing here but green. And I got green as far as the eye can see, right? You just give yourself a some kind of structure, some kind of scaffolding, some kind of support. And then depending on how comfortable you are with being in the moment, if you're someone that wants or needs a lot more detail, I could put something in here and put, haunted windmill, and that's all. And that's for me, I'm good. And then I'm confident that in the moment, when I start talking about this windmill, and maybe I'm thinking about Evil Dead, or was it Army of Darkness, and I'm thinking about them coming onto some kind of grassy field, and the grass is weird and brittle and gray, and there's no wind, but the windmill's slowly turning. Like, I got it. I got it. At least to the point maybe they start interacting with it, and maybe I'll need a little bit more, but I'm confident that my players will give me more fodder, and that will kind of help, and I'll be able to sort of keep that engine going. If that works for you, great. Just write down haunted windmill and you're done. If you need more, then create more. but you remember all this stuff is for you. At least the way, the way I use it, all this stuff is for you as the referee, as the GM. So give yourself the support that you need. Paul asks, is there a hexcrawl method for character building? I actually saw somebody playing around with this. I didn't love it completely, but it's a neat idea. And it basically was, so the concept was that the adventure starting in, let's say, in Lamende. And then as characters, you could pick these, let's say, these other cities, right? You could pick starting in Irin or Palon or Miwin or Dorlo. And depending on what city or these locations you started in, it would affect your character creation. So maybe Irin is, it seems like a lot of farm country. I don't know, whatever it is, right? It's okay, you're good at these things. You have certain things. And then you would move. So you would, Miwin, maybe you'd come up here, and as you'd experience these different things, they would kind of add. So by the time you got to the city, you would have gone through some number of steps that would have kind of been akin to doing character creation. That kind of procedural way, almost like Traveler, or if I remember, like the Ultima series used to do, at least Ultima 4. I think I remember you in the beginning of Ultima 4, and I know I've dated myself horribly, there's, I think, a gypsy woman, and I know it's not the correct term, but some kind of fortune teller, and you go into her wagon, and she kind of reads your fortune. And basically what it is a bunch of multiple choice, not dissimilar than like the Hoyt Kampf tests. Is that the way? Hoyt Kampf? I think whatever from Blade Runner, there's a turtle lying on its back. Do you turn it over? Whatever, those kind of things. And by answering her questions, you essentially be setting up your class. And so this was kind of doing the same thing, but using like a hex crawl, orienting it on hex crawl. Like, hey, by starting in Irin, then going to Dorlo, going to Lamende, you end up a certain way. By starting in Palin and going through Ewan, and maybe, there were kind of different things you could do. They do it. I didn't entirely love it, but there definitely is. I think there's a way you could probably flesh that in some interesting, especially if you are playing up those different cultures. Like if there are real meaningful differences between your peoples, depending on where they're from, and you want to play into that, okay, the people from Dorlo, they're a river people. They're good at this, good at that, bad at that. Irin, they're kind of, they're great horses. They're off in the plains. They're really great, and so they have certain characteristics that match up with that, whatever. You want to be careful too, because you don't want to end up in stereotypes, and I'm not, you don't want your Irin just to be kind of Mongol stand-ins or something, right? So you want to kind of, at least for me anyway, I don't want it to like, oh, the Irins are the Mongols. Like, no, I don't want that. But maybe you think about, well, these people live in a open grasslands with a bunch of pasture and farms. What are they like? How do they differentiate from Dorlo? So if you're born here, like what makes you different than a Dorolonian? What makes you different from a Miwanite? Or one of the Palin kind of thing. Yeah, Paul says factions. Yeah, factions, cultures, whatever. Ty says, keeping it simple is a great tip. I often go too deep with what really needs to be just a simple haunted windmill idea. Yeah, though ultimately, Ty, is if you need that extra granularity, specificity, then, you should give it to yourself, right? Support yourself. That's kind of like if I was going to pick one thing, like, if you get one of those GM questions, I'm a new GM, like, what advice can you give me? And I always feel like, hey, there's too much. But I might say my number one piece of advice is just support yourself. Of course, as a new GM, you may not know, you probably don't know what support you need. That's the kind of thing you figure out as you GM. You start to figure out, well, what do I need to do? What do I don't need to do? But I think ultimately it's support yourself. If you work best, if you're the most comfortable. So I think like GMing, I mentioned a few weeks ago, I scuba dive, and I hadn't been scuba diving for a long time. And I had a great trip. When I was off that kind of week, one of the things they was go on a scuba trip. And one of the keys in scuba, in scuba diving, the real key to it, there's safety things, right? But ultimately, we're not doing anything super technical. Really, it's all about how do you enjoy yourself the most, which generally means how do you spend the most time underwater? And you spend the most time underwater by being as relaxed as possible. You kind of get into the zone. And when you're as relaxed as possible, you're doing the best job with your breathing. You're not breathing too much. You're breathing nice and calm. And therefore, since your air control is very good, you get to stay down the longest. That's what you want. You want to be able to be down there amongst the fish and the coral and all the beautiful things to see as long as possible. And that is all about being relaxed. And I think in a way, GMing is a lot like that. I think you're going to have the most fun You're going to be able to get in the zone the most when you're relaxed. But all of us are different. And all of us require different things to get into that zone to be relaxed. And for some people, just a couple of sketches on a piece of scrap paper on a Post-it note is going to be enough to get them what they need. For other people, that would be, that's a nightmare. So I really think the key is sooner rather than later, I hope as a GM, you figure out what gets you the most comfort, what gets you the most comfortable, and then do that. Just don't do more than that unless you want to, right? But don't feel compelled, I should say, I guess, to do more than that. Do what you need to get comfortable, and then don't do more because that energy will probably just get wasted. Paul says that maps can be multiple layered. They can. Yeah, this is just an image. I grabbed it. I'm pretty sure this looks like it was pulled from, this is not my map. I pulled this ages ago from Reddit, and I just keep using it. And so now I kind of feel like it's the implied setting of these podcasts, of these streams. The Red River region, good old Dorlo. And on something like Worldographer, yes, you can have multiple layers. They can actually go. Worldographer is cool because you can zoom in, and it will, at least the first time you zoom in, it will generate the detail, though it can get a little bit wonky in there. This looks nice and neat on this level. Sometimes if there's another zoom in level, it can get a little bit kind of crazy. So I find I have to, at least I want to kind of clean it up more, but you've got it. And then you can also do stuff like have notes layers, and you can definitely do a lot with the apps. I don't have access to those layers here because this is just a flat image stuck in my Ouija board, not in natively in Worldographer. Hey, Brian Smith. Brian Smith, I know you said you're getting your kids or kid ready for school. It's my daughter's last day of vacation today, and she got to go to the beach. And boy, she got invited by a friend, and it's basically the perfect day to be at the beach because it's super hot. Let's see what else. Anything else going on here in the chat? What other questions you got? I got some time. Bring me questions. What else? Oh, what did I have on my list? I was going to look at my list, and then actually somebody gave me a question. So let's see. I know I was, so this is something I was going to do a video on. Well, I still mean to do a video on, and I will. And I think I've talked about this before, is me appreciating or wanting to lean in more on the cosmic conflict. Oh, Michael asked if I played Shadow Dark yet. I have not. I've only read that quick start that I did on stream. So here's my deal with Shadow Dark, and I mean, no, I'm not trying to throw shade at, I forget the lady who created it. She seems to be very nice. I want to say I talked to somebody who met her, and everyone, no one's got, I don't have anything bad to say about her, but Shadow Dark doesn't interest me. I don't need or require a bridge between 5e and OSR. I'm perfectly fine playing essentially BX or OC or like my own kind of hybrid thingamajig that I'm been tinkering with. So I don't need it. I don't know that it's doing anything that I'm feeling compelled to, I got to do that. I know some people love the real-time torches. I don't, but I haven't played it. Okay. So I haven't played, so I don't know. Maybe I'll play it. Maybe I will at a con, maybe at PAX Unplugged, somebody will be running Shadow Dark. I will certainly try it. And I don't think bad to say about it. Just having read the quick start, it just doesn't feel like it's for me. I'm kind of fascinated. Really, I feel like it really did a great job of hitting the market at the exact right time, where a lot of folks who've been, 5e's been around a long time. Maybe some of those folks are looking at one edition 1 or whatever they're calling it, and 1 D&D, and maybe not loving it or not thinking it's different enough, or really finally being time for something different. And this is going to hit that sweet spot for a lot of folks because it's going to take those 5e mechanics that are kind of familiar, but then it seems like it's also is adding sort of a greatest hits of kind of OSR and NSR innovations and slapping it all into a very pretty package. And a couple of things that I'm assuming is all her own or all their own, right? I think that, I don't know if that torches thing is from another game, but it's good. But I mean, some of the other stuff I read, it's like, oh, this is great, but it's not new to me. I've either seen this or something very like it, or, you know, I've already done this. You know, it just, there's not enough for me, new, different, whatever, to draw me in. Now, that said, I've only read the quick start. If I'm able to get a hold of the full books, or if I start hearing wonderful things people playing the full thing, maybe it'll pique my interest enough to get it. Maybe I'll get it just to cover on the channel, since people are super into it. And, you know, goodness knows if I can draw some new folks in with doing more Shadow Dark coverage, it would, if I was a businessman, it would behoove me to do it. But, you know, it's kind of like the thing with like OSC, right? Like, I like OSC. I like what OSC has done, but a lot of OSC was just repackaging BX, and I didn't need a repackaging of BX. I know people love the organization, and I think it's really well laid out, and people love the design and stuff, which is great. It's got a lot. It's very well put together, right? But ultimately, I don't need BX repackaged. I'm perfectly fine with BX. I just am. So I never ran out and kickstarted everything OSC, because I just thought, why? I don't need advanced OSC. I don't need those things. I'm either don't need them at all, or I'm fine just doing it myself. I just don't need it. You know, and Shadow Dark is kind of in a similar spot. Nothing wrong with it. It seems great. I'm sure people love it. People have had great things to say about it. I couldn't find anything really wrong with it. I had no objections to it, but I don't need it. You know, I've got it. I've got it already. Let's see. Brian Smith says they've been. Oh wait, hold on. Wait. I almost missed somebody. Let's see. Michael Fraker says that Delta D&D a long time ago abandoned turns in dungeon exploration. He did some testing. What was his? So Michael Fraker. I'll look up Deltas. I have actually Deltas. Well, it's actually right here, I think. The original edition Delta, Book of War. What did he come up with in terms of in replacing turns? I can look it up, but if you have a quickie rundown on what he found and what he changed it with, I'd be interested. Brian Smith has been scrounging around for Wilderness exploration procedures and found Uncharted Journeys for 5e. That's interesting. Oh yeah, Uncharted Journeys. Yeah, if I'm Brian Smith, I remember that came out. I think that was originally in, I think, the first edition. So from what I understand, the first edition of Adventures in Middle-earth had those rules in them, and I don't know the whys and wherefores about it, and I don't even know if this is accurate. This is what I heard, but for whatever reason, they didn't make it into the second edition of what is, I guess now, what are they still calling it? Adventures in Middle-earth, whatever they're calling it now, the 5th edition version. And so then they brought it out as its own thing. And actually reminds me of meaning to dig out because I do have first edition Adventures in Middle-earth to see what that's about. How did you find their procedures? I know we looked at the procedures in the One Ring, and they seem pretty good. I mean, it's a different kind of thing. It's more on that point crawly thing. Getting lost is really just a matter of more of a efficiency. It seems to be kind of point crawlish, but nothing wrong with that. But I'm definitely curious because I've heard other people talk about the Uncharted Journeys thing, and I've been meaning to go back and find it. Oh, let's see. An RPing dungeon exploring about the same speed as protract in the game. This is about, okay, so this is going back to the turns. There is a tool app called the Augur, which is worth a look. It's a solo roleplay tool, but it has map character tools. I'll check it out. I will check that out for sure. And then we'll see Michael going back to Delta. So he found that talking out the dungeon exploration took him as much time in real time as what was simulated in game time, so he just used a timer to mark off turns or hours. That's cool. I guess I think it's really dependent on your group. I find that my group will, I don't know if that would ring true with my group. I should time them though. Maybe it's an average thing. I kind of feel like some groups are more talky, chatty, planny. And I guess it's really up to you and your style, whether you want to, in a sense, penalize them by having that on real time. I tend to not. You know, my group is small. We're my home game is 2 players and me. So I will often give them the benefit of time, and I will tell them, hey man, listen, these could be some fraught choices you're making. Take your time, talk it out. So I would not want to penalize them with them trying to discuss strategy and then their torches are all burning out because they're taking their time doing it. but other groups are more on the ball, or you want to, and I played another long game where we'd be on it. And if we weren't moving fast enough, we had sand timers were coming out. And that kind of game, I could see saying, hey, or if you just need to rein it in because it gets too much chit chatty and people are going, I could totally see going, listen, real time now. I'm going to set this egg timer or whatever, 10-minute timer. I'm going to crank it, the sand timer, whatever. We're going to flip it. And at the end of the day, at the end of that, when the buzzer goes off or the sand runs out, I'm going to roll dice. So I can see both. See, Brian Smith says that they like the idea of burning hit dice to recover abilities and stuff. It's a fun trade-off. Absolutely. Oh, and Paul mentioned that the Augur. Is this an iPhone? Is this an iOS app or is it a computer? But the Augur is system agnostic. Let's see. Is it on my phone? No. Oh, Augur, you are. All right. Let's see if that works. No, I got a bunch of fortune-telling stuff. The Augur, let me just look it up over here for a quick minute. Oh, whoops. Cancel that. F11. The Augur. Well, let's check it out. Okay, so it's on itch. All right, so the Augur. Paul says there is a 5th edition D&D Adventures in Middle-earth. Yeah, no, I know, Paul, but I thought they changed the name. Did they? I thought that they changed it. I'll just go here. I thought they changed it to something else. It's, what is this from? It's from free. So the old one's called Adventures in the Middle-earth. Is this going to take me? Yeah, I've got. Is it still called Adventures in Middle-earth? I thought maybe they changed it, but maybe they didn't. Oh, yeah, it's there. I think this is it. So now it's called. No, I didn't mean to save that. Maybe. So, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Now it's called. Right? This is 5th. This is the one that's 5e compatible. Am I right? Am I wrong? Yeah. So they don't call it Adventures in Middle-earth anymore. They're calling it Lord of the Rings role playing. And that's what I was talking about. They changed the name change. But I think that my understanding is, though, again, this is like third hand, 4th hand, 5th hand, 6th hand, was that thing in here was, let's see if they have the table of contents, was is not there. Whatever those rules are. Adventures, heroic cultures, callings, craft, adventuring phase, the journey. I'm not sure because they have it here. In any case, I'll have to look it up. Yes, I've been meaning to try Strider mode, which is actually on my list. I got a big list, but that's what I was talking about. It's now called Lord of the Rings. And now we go back to the Augur really quick. Looks like it's got some cool stuff in here. So this is if you're interested in this, and I have no connection, who brought this to my attention? Who can I blame for this? I think this is Paul. Blame Paul Drury, folks, if you end up spending $25 on something. This is at the-augur.itch.io/the Augur altogether. A tool for those who dream of fantastic worlds and the creatures that inhabit them. Conceived for solo players, GMs, and world builders. Procedural generation, total customization, AI integration, and much more. Start playing for free right now. Well, since I'm pretty much at the hour, I'm not going to do that. Paul Paul says it's on the phone. I don't know if is it on. It's not in the App Store on iOS, so I don't know if there's a different way to do it. Oh, I see. After buying, you can go. I guess you can launch it as a web app. I got you. Brian's trying to wrestle a layout into submission. A city with lots of info all on a single page. Whoo! Good luck with that. I'm happy to help Brian Smith if I can. Not that I'm a layout genius or anything. If it's something you could share, post it on the forums, and you can maybe some eyeballs will get put on it. Cool. Maybe I'll see if I can get a code for this, and I'll see about setting it up. We can look at it because it looks like it looks some neat stuff. Let's just take a look at some. So here we've got. So here's kind of your overworld sort of map. I don't know if I have. So Michael Frere asked if I ever talked about city or ruins crawling. I don't think I have. It's a good subject, though. I have to say, I don't do much city crawling. I have thoughts on it, but I haven't really done it much because I tend to just abstract it out. I haven't played in a campaign that was extremely urban focused like Tolus. That would, from what I've read, who is it that's someone was posting, or I think they still are. They've been blogging about their Tolus campaign forever, and it's great reading. It seems like a great campaign, and there's a lot there that because it's a whole campaign that really centers around the city, then wanting to really explore the city and having that kind of granularity like you do in a dungeon in a city would make sense. I haven't run that sort of campaign, so I tend not to worry about it. I tend to really just want to know if it's a city, like a city, and my cities tend to be smaller. They're not these sprawling water deep metropoli. It might be the Alexandrian. I'm not sure. It probably is. Then it's not really important. I don't, you get lost. It's more like hexcrawling in the sense that, like, you have neighborhood. There's something in there, and do you get lost? Or even more of a point crawl, because it's not like you're going to starve to death if you get lost, because you can always just pick a direction and walk. Eventually you'll get somewhere. So it's kind of point crawling a little bit. And I kind of just do that, or I just have the players kind of get where they need to go because they're going to specific places that tend to be not hidden, or not, the exploration factor isn't super there. But I do have some thoughts on it because I think there's a lot of stuff that we can use from hex crawling and point crawling to run urban adventures if you want to, but it's not something that I've had to do much because it just doesn't work out that way. Those things are important. Like I always see those pictures where people draw these massive maps of their city with all the streets and everything, and I'm like, this is beautiful, but I'm never going to use it because I'm just going to say, yeah, you go to the docks, you get to the docks, warehouses are there, kind of thing. Oh, you need to go to the merchant's quarter. Great, you follow the main road, and eventually you get to the merchant's quarter. So, I'm not, it just doesn't end up being a thing that I tend to do. Oh, there you go. Ian says the Alexandria has a 12-part blog series on urban crawls. And I go there. Like I said, I do have some thoughts. Maybe I'll put them together at some point, but it seems like, and I think it is the Alexandrian who is posting Tolus stuff. He's got firsthand experience running it. So I will, I think deferring to him on that until I can get my thoughts together, probably a good thing. Let's see, before I head out, what other, okay, whoops. Oh, so you got your dungeons in there. So you got your, let me start. What's for, I guess this is first. So you've got your overworld, you got your dungeon, you've got some conversations. You got a different, here we go. You have a different style overworld. And here we get actual hexes. We have a different style dungeon. Oh, cool. Yeah, let me see if I can get a hold of a key. Here you have some hex map, hex generation, system agnostic. And rule set, buy once, play everywhere, but bam, bang. Cool. Okay. Very nice. All right, folks. Well, I don't know if I answered that many questions, but hopefully it was a worthwhile stream for everybody. feel free to hit me up on whatever social media you find me if you have questions. I would love to really get more questions from folks that I can make videos answering or answer in streams. It beats me trying to think of what people need or want. But thanks everybody for hanging out. I will definitely see if I can get a hold of the auger by hook or by crook. Maybe we'll go through it. We shall see. So thanks for posting that. I don't know what else is going on this week. School starts tomorrow, which I'm kind of ready for. I'm ready for my daughter to go back to school. And I'm ready for this heat to cool down a smidge, but I don't know if that's going to happen today. Anyway, folks, enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.